Well, welcome everybody to my presentation for the graduation project I did at CMD, which is called Fixing Design Systems. I did this project at Debt Agency. Jordi from Debt is here as well, who was my mentor during the project as well. And in the next 20-30 minutes or so, I'm going to try and talk about my project and explain to you what I've done and what I've reached. Well, it's about design systems, and if you Google design systems, you see a lot of articles like this. Why design systems fail, why design systems fail, why design systems fail, how we're going to make them work in 2020. There's a lot of people talking about why design systems fail. And this, for me, is really motivating, because my dream is to make design systems work. So at the end, I want to change all of these titles from why design systems fail to why design systems work, or why design systems are amazing. Well, you already heard me say design systems quite a lot. I'm going to talk a lot about design systems. I'm going to mention it often. It might be really vague at first, like what the hell is a design system? But don't worry, at the end of this presentation you will know three things. First, what design systems are. Secondly, what's going wrong with design systems. And thirdly, what we can do to improve design systems. So let's begin. Who of you has ever gone to the website of Belastingdienst? Show of hands.
Oh, yeah.
And I suspect everybody, because you're not a criminal and you're not avoiding taxes. Maybe you two over there, I can see a hand. Well, nobody here is a criminal, so I suspect you go there often. Well, I do. And when you go to Belastingdienst and you go to inloggen, you can go to 3 or 4 different pages. And 3 of these are Mijn Belastingdienst, Voor Ondernemers, and Mijn Toeslagen. And what's interesting is that it's the same company, it's the Belastingdienst, but every single page that you can access through the same button looks totally different. And this is not unique for just the Belastingdienst. Keeping big digital products consistent is very hard. Often there's probably one team for this side, one team for this side, and one team for that side. And making sure that all these teams create a consistent design within the same product, that's very difficult. And it often leaves users feeling a bit like this. Where am I? I'm confused. So this is why the industry started working with design systems. And then you think, okay, you say design systems a lot, but what is a design system? Well, the most basic idea of a design system is almost like a box of Legos. So I went to my parents' house the other day and I retrieved my childhood boxes of Legos. As you can see, this is a really nice boat thingy that you can make. I think this was actually from Bart, from my brother. And what's cool about Legos is that you have all these different blocks that you can stick together on each other. You can already see that this is becoming something amazing. And you can build different things with it. And what's especially amazing about this is that the same blocks of Legos can be used to build different things with. So for instance, this box of Legos, you can build this boat, but I think, yeah, you can also build this boat with it and this boat with it. And a design system, the base idea of a design system is very similar to this. So instead of a box of Legos that you can use to build different things, you have a library of design components, like for instance different buttons or sidebars that you can use to build different products with. These products are from the same company, which is called Atlassian, and this is from their design system. And although the tools are really different, this is a tool for developers saving their code, and this is a tool for teams to manage their progress, to manage their process. You can immediately see that they're very similar in how they look and feel, and that they're from the same company. So if we compare that to how the Belastingdienst do, you can see the impact of a successful design system. It makes sure that your product, different parts of your digital product, still are consistent when you build more and more and more things. And I myself, I've always loved consistency. So if you ever eaten at my house, you know that I love to set the table very neatly with all the placemats underneath the plates and stuff. If you ever work with me, you know that I always clean my desk and I make sure all the cables are out of the way before I start working. And in my design work as well, at that I often am busy with cleaning up big files, organizing them neatly, or creating like different components, like different Lego blocks for projects that you can use later on. So when Jordi in July of 2019 talked to me about design systems and that there's a problem with design systems, I thought, this is it, this is my problem, this is for me. It's a product that should bring consistency. I love consistency, it's not working. Okay, I gotta fix this, because this is right at my end. And Jordi explained to me that while design systems promise very consistent and amazing designs, they are often difficult to work with for designers and developers. The promise of a design system is amazing, but designers working with it often feel like this. They feel overwhelmed and they feel limited in their design capabilities due to the fact that they have to make things only with this box of things, only with this, and they cannot use anything outside of it, or at least that's how they feel. So I'm on a mission, and I want to answer the question, how can we fix, quote unquote fix, design systems specifically for designers? So I went to investigate that, and I found something that I wasn't expecting. So I went into this project expecting that I was going to create some kind of digital product, some kind of tool that designers could use to utilize their box of Legos to create amazing designs with. But when I looked into the tooling landscape already out there, I discovered that there's a whole lot of tools designers can use. If a designer wants to create a new design, there's different design tools. If a designer wants to know more about the design system and which components to use where, there's a whole lot of documentation tools for that. If a designer wants to share their result or save their designs, there's version management tools that keep all the different versions within a big team up to date, or different tools that help you communicate your design to others. If a designer needs inspiration for what his design system should look like, there's a whole lot of big companies that made their design system documentation public. And if all of this isn't enough for the designer, there's a huge community of plugins that a designer can use that gives them more pro features. And what's even more amazing is that all of these plugins, and mostly the 5 big design tools here in the middle, are expanding very rapidly, and that there is more and more functionalities and tools coming. So with all of these tools and stuff at your disposal, at the top of your fingertips, designers must feel like this, right? You're like, yeah, that's easy. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. So I looked at this study, which is from NG Studio, which is a big design system workshop studio. They did a study with over 230 participants, mostly designers from almost all of the biggest brands in the Dutch market. And they found that actually only 4% of all participants had a problem with tooling. The problems were more about adoption, maintenance, staffing, and team maturity. And what NG Studio noted is that all of these struggles are basically people problems. Something that in the interviews I did with industry experts, also encountered. For instance, this Auke Akkerman, who is a freelance UX designer, I interviewed him and he told me that not the quality of the system, but the organization and the people are way more important. And another designer, Mark Tone, who is a senior visual designer at that agency, told me that from communication to collaboration, everything surrounding the design process is what's important, and not your buttons and your components. So I realized that a design system is more than just a box of Legos. It's almost like building a city with that box of Legos. So for instance, Zoe, if I give you some blocks to work with.
You don't know what you're going to end up with.
Blocks to work with. And for instance, Bart, I give you some blocks to work with. And I ask you, okay, let's build a city together. All 3 of you are going to work probably on a house or something else. But each and every one of you is going to do that in his or her own way. If you run into a problem, you probably have a unique way of solving it that is specifically for you. Or Zoe might like pink colors more and Bart might like red colors more. there's a lot of people, there's the builders with the design system, and they have a lot of behaviors and goals and ways to solve their problem that have a big impact. And there's also, if we're going to build a city, we'll probably need to finish it on time, and later on we need to connect the houses. So we might say, Jordi, you're responsible for managing the entire project and making sure that everybody's on track and that everything fits together. So there's also a big organization surrounding the work you do. So we have our building blocks as a basic. We have the people who are actually working with it and their behaviors and their goals. And we have an entire organization around this. These three things form the three pillars of a design system, which I call the system contents, the human heuristics, and the organization. And within the design process, it looks very much like this. So you have a box of library components that you use to work with, your system contents. You have the designers actually working and their behavior, attitudes, and their goals. And you have an entire organization surrounding that. So we already saw that there's a lot of tools available to work with the system contents. So this is not where we should look for a solution. This is not what we need to fix in order to make design systems work. And the organization, that's kind of a whole other story. I could do a new graduation project for specifically the organization, probably about 6 years or so that I would need for that. Because there's a lot of people, different people from the organization, and my focus for this graduation is designers. How can I make it better for designers? So I decided to focus on the human heuristics of designers. And I came to the conclusion that the biggest concern isn't building blocks or its tools, but it's human behavior, and more specifically, designers' behavior. So I went out and I observed designers' behavior. I went to Eneco, which is a client from Dev. I spent an entire day there observing how all the designers work and questioning the entire team on how they work. And I did about 20 or so interviews with industry experts and other designers from the field to talk about how they work and what their problems are. And what I found is a couple of behaviors that designers have that are blocking for design systems to work. For instance, designers often work without a goal in mind before they start, or they don't use their Lego blocks, they don't use the reusable components. Or when they change something about it, like for instance the button color, they do it just on their own laptop and it doesn't get communicated to the rest. So they don't communicate with other team members, and they're terrible at involving other stakeholders, like for instance Jordi, our project manager, into the design process. So I thought, okay, we have these behaviors, we want to change this. So how do we change behavior? Well, for that I used the BG-Fogg behavioral model. It works fairly simple. It states that whenever you want a behavior to occur, that is based on two factors. You have the ability to perform a certain behavior, and you have the motivation to do it. Then the third thing is a trigger that actually triggers you to do it. So for instance, losing weight, I need to go to the gym. And if I want to go there, if my motivation is really low, it doesn't matter how amazing of a gym membership you give to me, I won't go. If my motivation is high enough and you give me a good gym membership, I might go. And the act of giving me that gym membership, that will be the trigger, something that triggers you to do it. So if your motivation and your ability are not high enough, the trigger won't do anything and nobody will change his or her behavior. And if either your ability or your motivation are high enough, then your trigger is successful and you have a behavioral change. So that's also the way that we need to look at these things. About the motivation and the ability of all the behaviors that are in here. But for some of these behaviors, I could already conclude that it's mostly motivation. I mean, there's a lot of communication tools. There's nobody preventing you from saying anything to a stakeholder. So the ability is high enough. So what we need to focus on there is motivation. For this one, I was doubting a bit. Was it motivation or were they not able to use their reusable component? So I wanted to investigate that. And for that I made a prototype of a concept. With the question, can we increase the ability of designers finding their reusable elements? I won't go into it too much, but it worked with an elaborate search page and some and some search results where you could get your elements back, and recommending elements to designers while they were working. And I found that yes, we can increase their ability, but we don't need to. Because one of the biggest things that they mentioned to me is that they want to be fast and they want to find their elements fast. But within one of the interviews, one of the designers noted that there's already a tool for that, to do it, which is Runner, which is a sketch plugin. You can use this to design faster. So we could increase the ability, but we didn't need to, because there was already, the ability was not the problem. It's not the cost, it was the motivation, again. So we could conclude that here the motivation was the problem. Okay, so I wanted to investigate more about the communication with other team members. So I made a prototype for that. Can we increase the motivation for communicating changes to team members? And there's two types of motivation. You have extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is like a boss telling you need to do it, otherwise you'll be fired, or you get money if you do this. Something that other people give you for performing a certain task. And intrinsic comes from yourself. So for instance, my graduation project is both extrinsic and intrinsic, because I won't graduate as a designer if I don't do it, but I really want to solve this problem. And for this I focused mostly on extrinsic motivation. How can we kind of force designers to communicate? So I made a prototype where if a designer is working and he wants to export a design he made, which had a change to the design system in it, you would get a notification saying you could do one of these 4 things. Keep on editing would take you back and nothing would happen. You have to go continue, and all the 3 other options force you to write a message to one person, one or more persons from the team. And the response to this was pretty good. Oh, my audio isn't working. Let's try that one more time. No, that's a shame. Let's hope it works later on. So one of the test participants told me that he definitely thought it was a good idea because it forces people to communicate the change. So the concept works well, but it also indicated some problems, like forcing people to communicate, like stopping all design changes before communicating a change might cause new problems, like a slow workflow. So it might not be the best idea to completely focus on extrinsic motivation, but it's better to focus on intrinsic motivation. So okay, we now know more about how we could possibly solve this. This test also indicated 2 new behaviors that I hadn't noted before. The first of which is that often designers saw a design system as too much trouble. I don't want to start with it, it's too much trouble. And secondly, often new designers coming into a company were a bit hesitant to adapt to the new workflow. They like the way they made their designs before, and they're not willing to change that now, which both are motivation problems. So I investigated these with, you guessed it, another prototype. With the question, can we change the attitude towards design systems using a team ritual? So what is the team ritual? Well, the idea was that every week designers would come together and they would work on a challenge which I called the break of the week. For instance, recreate this component using only buttons from your design system. Something that was really weird and in a way useless to do, but that helped you push, like helped you discover what you could do with the design system. It's almost like saying, okay, make the most crazy, make the craziest thing you can think of with that box of Legos. And the response was fairly good. No audio again, that's a shame. Well, the response was fairly good. One participant said that it was a good recurring exercise to make a design system come more alive. So that is basically confirming the change we want to make with this prototype. But another participant said that, okay, it's nice to do fun things, but it needs to feel useful as well. So the challenge of recreating this with only buttons, they were like, okay, why the hell should we do that? That is not the way you would use a design system, so why should we doing it that way? So at the end, we could create a shared positive attitude, but the ritual needs to be useful for everyday work. And it is possible to create useful team rituals for design systems, something we can take along with us if we want to change the general attitude of designers. So we knew more about this. And now that we have the full overview of all the behaviors in there, we can see that every single one of them is a motivation problem. And we've already discovered that it is best to focus on intrinsic motivation instead of extrinsic motivation. So we need designers with intrinsic motivation to change these behaviors. We need to create and support a new kind of designer, which I call the systematic designer. And a systematic designer, to briefly elaborate on that, would be somebody that has the motivation in his or herself to change these behaviors into something positive. So is enthusiastic about a design system. If he or she makes a change about a change in the design system, that change is communicated to everybody and is for the entire design system. And they work with reusable components over creating new stuff every time. But how do we get there? How do we create these systematic designers? Well, by three things. First, we need to inspire them. Then we need to educate them. And then we need to support them. And for that, I made a prototype. And I hope this works. That is such a shame. Okay. I've got a really cool video that I prepared for you, but somehow it is not working. That is. Okay, this is really.
Maybe don't split the screen.
Do you think that is?
Might be.
Sorry for this delay. If you want to take a drink in the meantime, feel free. We've got terrible sound, but I hope it's loud enough. So, in order to make design systems work, we need new designers. And the prototype I created is a platform for inspiring, educating, and supporting the future systematic designers. And you saw a bit of how it works in the video, but I'll go through it a bit more. So if you go to systematicdesigners.com, you get this, which is almost like a collection of different stories that you can explore that help you become a systematic designer. And all of these things I saw in the previous prototypes, like for instance, creating a ritual or that we need intrinsic motivation, I tried to combine all of that into these stories. So if you click on a story, for instance, define your ritual, you would get a pop-up and there is sometimes the stories are more informative and sometimes they're more interactive. So with this you could set your own ritual in motion and export your ritual, which would then lead to a download that you, for instance, could print or could share with other people in your design team. or you could continue browsing. And this is just to make the product work better. If you ever feel like, okay, I want to take a break, you could save it in between, get a link and come back to it later. And if you finish all the stories, you would get results like this. For instance, these are the stories, and if you finish them, you would get results like this. For instance, a printout that defines your new ritual for you as a team. Printout that tells you something about what type of designer you are. Or this is more like a fun story giving you insight in how design systems should work. Or it could be a list of stakeholders that you could put up on the wall and be like, okay, hey, everybody know that these people are important to involve. Or it could be something to share that indicates how far you are with your design system. So all of this, if you finish all of these stories, that gives designers, first it tries to inspire those designers, and it also gives them the tools to have a chat about it with the other people from the team. So with this prototype, what does it look like if we go further? Because it's a prototype, it's a clickable design, but it's not fully there yet. So if we really want to change all of these titles from design systems fail to design systems are amazing, we need to actually build it. So I started with that. You could go to systematicdesigners.com. It's very, very, very minimal, but there is a first basis for it, which is this. You could now only click on this to show a model, so it's not operational at all. But we made a start, and I'm passionate to keep working on this after the graduation. I'm going to do this together with these two people. You're already sitting over there, who's going to help me with the content and the design of it. And we have Daan van der Zwaag, who is one of Loï's ex-graduates, who also helped me a lot with the project and my story. He is actually the one who built this first setup. And we are going to go further with this and create more on this platform. But I figured, could we do more? Could we reach designers on more places? Because now it's just a platform where you need to go to the URL. Well, it turns out designers are often browsing Instagram for inspiration. So I made an Instagram page for this, which is the Systematic Designer Instagram page. And to kind of mold these stories into the format of Instagram, there are different kind of quiz interactive videos here. So for instance, this is not work. What would you do? A, B, or C? Oh, it is C. And then you get a short explanation about it, which then, this works amazing to talk about it with different people. And of course, since it's Instagram, there's memes in it as well. Those memes really help to further talk about it. So, I would like you all to imagine, this is Roa. She's a designer, amazing designer, UX designer. And in her break, she's browsing Instagram, seeing one of the posts made by Systematic Designer, and she thinks, oh, this is interesting. So when she's back at her desk, she goes to the platform and she discovers different stories. And she's like, hey, we need a team ritual. So she does the short interactive thing. She collects her amazingly printed thing from paper and puts it up on the wall. But what she also can do is bring this to the next meeting that she has with her fellow designers and explain what the ritual should be. And this is the true power of the future product and the current prototype. It's that we can spark a conversation about systematic designers. Because since it is about intrinsic motivation, it will take a lot of effort, and it will take people like Jordi, like me, like Daan, who feel inspired to do this and who want to change things, to talk about it. And well, with the final product, they get help in that. So today we sparked a conversation about systematic designers, so that tomorrow we can change the design landscape with design systems at the center of that. And that's how we'll finally end up fixing design systems. Thank you for your attention. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thanks.